All right, hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about a citizen science program that's called Snapshot Serengeti, and this is something that's being used by people all over the world, and we're trying to help out scientists. They had a program that was in the Serengeti, but it's all finished right now because citizens all over the world helped out those scientists, and the project is over now. We're going to be looking at one that's called Snapshot Gorongosa, and that's for the Gorongosa National Park that's in Mozambique in Africa. And basically what we're doing is looking at camera traps. That's what that picture is on the left, and trying to identify animals. And then we record those animals for the scientists, and then they can collect data on how the animals are doing, how the populations are doing. They can keep track of human poaching, and just make sure that the national park is doing well. So that's what we're going to learn how to do today. So let me go ahead and get you started here. Oops, give me just a second. There we go. Okay, let's give you some background information. So the Snapshot Serengeti program is already completed. They were studying carnivore competition, herbivore competition, predator-prey relationships. Trying to get my image out of the way there. Good. They used a grid of 225 camera traps across the Serengeti, and they were able to study how over 30 species were distributed across the landscape and how and when they interacted with lions and one another. And so that was the Snapshot Serengeti. So this is called, what we're doing here is called citizen science. So how do scientists use volunteers? Each photo is shown to several volunteers. This could be an example of a photo. So usually around 10 volunteers look at each of the photos. The volunteers determine several things. They determine what species are present in the photo. So if this were the photo, I would say, they're never this clear, by the way. The photos are much harder to determine. But I would say, oh, that's a cheetah, and that there are some buffalo, for example, in the background, or some wildebeest, or whatever they are. I'd have to look more closely. So what species are present? How many animals are present? Well, there's just one cheetah, and then I would have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and figure out how many animals were present. And then I need to know what they're doing. The cheetah is watching the animals in the background. The animals in the background maybe are feeding. They're not doing a whole lot more. Okay, and then computers analyze the data that the volunteers give. It turns out the volunteers are really, really good at this. Even though I might not know what those animals are on the background, there's some ways to help me figure that out, and we get really good at it. So if the volunteers disagree, the photo is sent directly to the scientists, and they identify the photos themselves without using the volunteers. But the volunteers can help them get through tons and tons of data that they couldn't get through otherwise. Your data that you used for this project will be used to help the Snapshot Gorongosa project. So that is one thing that I ask, that I plead. Please be careful. Please don't do this carelessly. Please, if you're not sure, ask a teacher or get another opinion. Just do the best that you can, but don't screw around and add dumb things to this, because they're really using this data. Okay, so we need to know a little bit about Gorongosa National Park. So Gorongosa National Park is in Mozambique. It is what they're looking at, what the scientists are looking at, is mapping corridors for large carnivores. So we're talking about lions, leopards, hyenas, and wild dogs. But then we also need to know about all their prey species. So pretty much every animal we want to know about. The movement of carnivores is essential to the recovery of a robust carnivore community in Gorongosa. So they want to make sure that they can return this community back to its original status before humans were poaching and that kind of thing. Camera traps document carnivore species in neighboring forestry and hunting reserves. So we're trying to see what impact poaching is having on the animals of Gorongosa also. So trying to better understand how human activity influences the wildlife. All right, so you're going to click on this link up there that says Snapshot Gorongosa. It'll actually be on your assignment, so you don't have to click on it now. And when you get there, there's a video, or there's a little tutorial at the beginning. You definitely want to read through the tutorial. So there's like 5 little slides or something like that. What is that, 5 or 6? Whatever. Just click the arrow, read them, and blah, blah, blah. You can get the hang of what you're doing. So click on the tutorial, it says. Then it says, read through the tutorial, and the tutorial will tell you that there are 3 photos. So when an animal walks by, the camera goes click, 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 and takes 3 pictures. That is not always true. So sometimes you will be given a photo where there's just 1 or 2, but it's so helpful when there are 3 photos, because you can see the animals from slightly different angles. Sometimes all you get is like an eyeball, and you have to try to identify what that animal is from the eyeball, whatever. And so 3 photos really is very helpful, but you won't always get that. Okay, so these are what you're going to be seeing. You're going to see some photos, and it says daytime photos may have up to 3 quick shots. Here we have 2 different species. If you're careless, you might not notice that there's 2 different species. So we've got these little guys in front and then one different guy in the back. So it says always check the background and trees for more animals. So sometimes there might be animals that are migrating through in the background. Notice this is the second photo, so he's in a different position. If I go back, you can see he's walking through, so that's a different photo. And just check to see if there's anybody else in the background that you might not have noticed the first time. If you know the species, then identify them. If not, you can click, let me get my picture out of here. You can click on these things and they will help you. So like, pattern, color, horns, tail, or build. So if you see, for example, if you see his horns and you're like, okay, I don't know what kind of animal that is, but I can identify those horns. Click on the horns and it'll show you some different shapes of horns. And you can be like, okay, his are this shape. And then they'll help you recognize what animal it is, even if you've never seen this animal before. You can do the shape of the body. If all you can see is the tail, you can identify different types of tails, or animals that are similar. So maybe you think that this is a particular type of gazelle and you want to see what other animals are like it. So there's all kinds of things. Try those buttons, especially if you don't know the animal. So try to be as certain as possible of your identification. All right, so then here, let me get my picture out of the way again. Over here, these are the questions it's going to ask. So it's going to tell you about the Thompson's gazelles because that's what these 2 guys are doing. So I'm going to identify them as gazelles. Notice that it says often confused with Grant's gazelles and impala. So I'm definitely going to click on the Grant's gazelle and I'm going to click on the impala button to make sure that I'm not identifying the wrong animal, to make sure that these are in fact the Thompson's gazelles. Okay, once I'm certain that those are Thompson's gazelles, then it's going to ask me how many there are. Well, right now I see 2 Thompson's gazelles, so I'm going to put 2. And then what behaviors do you see? And it's very simple. Are they resting, standing, moving, eating, or interacting? And I would say that they're largely eating right now, but you could say standing, and I think you can click more than one at a time. So now I only identify the Thompson's gazelle. I also need to identify the guy that's in the background, and there'll be opportunity to identify him as well. So he's called a bush buck in the back, and so I'll identify that he is there as well. All right, so now this is an example of a photo that you might come across, and initially you might be like, meh, I don't see much. There's actually a ton there. So you've got one animal that's right here, but then if you look along the horizon, you've got many, 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 many. I'm going to assume it's the same animal. So you can assume this is a herd of them that's going by. So you're going to have to try to estimate. I often pinch the picture open as wide as possible so that I can see how many animals are there. So there's often more than what you first notice. Use the plus. It doesn't show you the plus on this image, I don't think, but there's a plus on the picture to get closer. There's a half dark circle. So there's a circle that has like a dark and a light, and you can see the negative of the image, and sometimes that's helpful. And then don't forget to check the background and the trees for other animals. All right, here's another photo. A lot of times the photos are under, they're too dark, so they're super hard to see. So here's what I was talking about with that half dark circle. You can click on that and you can see a negative of the image. So here's the negative of the image, and that might help me actually a little bit to see these animals a little bit more clearly. I feel like I can see their horn shape. So even though I'm not sure what these animals are, now I can go and check their horns and see what I can figure out. Did you, however, notice as you were looking that there's a bird right there? So that's interesting. You might not be able to identify which bird that is, but did you notice that? Okay, now I have linked here a video of me trying to identify the animals in this video. And it's fascinating. I mean, in this photo. This photo fascinated me because it's a series of 3 photos and there was a surprise in it. I thought it was super cool. All right, I think this is our last one. So what do you see? So go ahead and take a moment to see what you see and what they're doing. Be careful. How many animals are there? Look as closely as you can. What do you see? Lots of surprises in this one. All right, there are 3 wildebeest. Do you see all the wildebeest? So here's one wildebeest, here's one wildebeest, and then there's one standing behind. So there are 3 wildebeest. What else do you see here? Well, there's a zebra leg right there. Do you see the stripes on the zebra leg? So there's a zebra and there's the stripes on his tail right there. There's two tails there, KJ. Yeah, so we've got a zebra standing there. But then there's even more zebras right here. And when you pinch this photo open, you can see them really well. So there are the zebra butts. So you would need to identify all of the animals that are in this particular photo. All right, and then this is from the scientists. This is what they say. We do not offer an impossible or an I don't know option, even when they're really, really hard, because previous testing on a small scale prototype indicated that such answers were overused and provided no information on the actual species classification. Thus, oh, I get two more of those, don't I? Thus, wasting volunteer effort. Image difficulty and probability of being correct can instead be assessed by measuring variance across individual volunteer answers. So, what that means, you guys, is that some of these photos, look at these photos, some of them are super hard to identify. And people would just really quickly click on, I don't know, instead of being like, well, I can guess. So, for example, what would this animal be? Well, it's certainly not a giraffe in letter D. We know it's not a giraffe. We know it's not an aardvark. So we can make some pretty good guesses, and then they use the guesses from the different guesses from the volunteers to sort of focus in on what animal it might be. So guess sensibly. The photo in the bottom left corner, for example, letter C, has one animal. It is not eating. It's not a giraffe. It's not a buffalo or a bird. It's probably a hyena, I would guess. So volunteers as a group got both C and D correct. So these photos were shown to 10 volunteers and they got it right. So don't give up just because it's a hard photo. And let's see, now it's your turn. So we're going to go ahead and open the Snapshot Safari assignment on Canvas. After you identify everyone in the photo, take a screenshot of the photo. In order to grade it, I need to see the photo that you looked at. So take a screenshot of it, insert the photo, scale it down if you need to, into the data table, and then indicate which animals you identified. So in this case, I identified 3 wildebeest and 4, I think, zebras. And then this is how your grade will go. If you do 6 photos, I'll give you a C. If you do a good job on 6 photos, I'll give you a C. 7 photos, I'll give you a B. 8 photos, I'll give you an A. And you can do up to 4 extra photos to earn up to 4 more points. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know if you have any questions.